Authorities say 30-year-old Jordan Neely was acting erratically, and some witnesses reported he threatened passengers on the Manhattan F train when the 24-year-old veteran stepped in. Other passengers seen holding Neely's arms. He was later pronounced dead at the hospital.
This is such a hard case for jurors acting in good faith based on the evidence presented in front of them. They start off with the premise that the defendant in this case was a good man trying to do the right thing and act as a good Samaritan and help people. And now they're being asked to potentially convict this man for manslaughter and/or criminally negligent homicide. That's a hard burden that they have.
This was an individual who took the situation into his own hands. Just looking at that video, you know it's wrong. No one has the right to take the life of another person.
You're a donut! You're so stupid! You're so stupid! You're stupid!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Opinions Vary. That's Opinions with an A. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we're going to get into the Daniel Penny trial, and he is on trial for criminally negligent homicide at this point after the manslaughter charge has been dismissed by a Manhattan judge for the incident that happened about a year ago on a New York City subway train where he stepped in to stop Jordan Neely, who was erratic, mentally ill, and threatening everybody on the train. You saw there shortly after the incident happened, New York Governor Kathy Hochul spreading her wisdom, I say that sarcastically, and adding fuel to the fire of why this has even come to trial at this point. So we have a couple of Fox News reports on what is being called a lifeline for embattled New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg, because in an unprecedented sort of move, the judge has basically told the jury, forget about that charge, the most serious charge of manslaughter. Now you can move on to the charge of criminally negligent homicide. I've never heard of anything like it before. The jury's going to be home all weekend now. A lot of people saying this isn't fair and that it is grounds for an appeal should Daniel Penny get convicted. Without further ado, we'll get into a couple of Fox News reports, and I'll comment along the way. Let's go.
Bring it into the criminal arena reeks of politics to me with these facts and circumstances. Again, I'd like to stay neutral, but I cannot. I feel very strongly that there is now a wave, a trend where prosecutors have people picketing outside of their offices and demand charges be brought, when normally they would just say, you know what, it was a tragic accident. It doesn't rise to the level of a criminal offense.
It seems that the judge was, again, forcing some sort of decision, a unanimous one at that, on the manslaughter charge. And they worked at that for the better part of 4 days here, didn't come up with that. So the judge comes back and says, all right, we'll drop that. It looks a little shaky.
It is.
Well, he dropped it because the prosecutors asked him to drop it. He didn't do it on his own. He dropped it because prosecutors said, okay, oopsie, we didn't get what we wanted. How can we try to get a conviction still? Aha! Let's drop the main charge, because obviously we didn't get that. Let's send them back. And with the judge telling him to go back there and deliberate, maybe there's this implied thought that maybe the judge wants him to find him guilty of that lesser charge. Again, I'm not saying the prosecutors are doing this. I'm not saying the judge is doing it. I'm saying that's the implied message, The
prosecutors are absolutely doing this. Alvin Bragg is absolutely ordering his prosecutor to do this. This is a sham. And once again, you had the Donald Trump trial, which was another sham. Now you have another sham, and this is nothing new for New York City. I'm from this area. I was a police officer in the NYPD from 1996 to 2002 before I moved on to another police department. In 1999, you had Amadou Diallo, who got shot by 41 times by plainclothes police officers who were looking for a rape suspect. They mistook Amadou Diallo for that rape suspect. Amadou Diallo did not speak English. He made a furtive movement towards his pocket, reached out with his wallet. It was dark out. They shot him 41 times and killed him. Awful, tragic accident. New York City, after waves of protest, decided they were going to bring second-degree murder charges against those police officers. It got so bad that the trial had to be moved out of New York City. That's how bad the protests got. You had celebrities like Susan Sarandon getting locked up at one police plaza daily, and it got so bad that the lawyers for those police officers decided we can't get a fair trial in the borough of Manhattan. They won, and they got the trial moved to Albany. In the end, they were all found not guilty of all charges. This is nothing new for New York City. That's my point. New York City overcharges and puts charges on and presses charges against people when they're not justified. They do it all the time for political reasons. That's what we're seeing here, and it's just getting worse and worse. It hasn't gotten better.
It stinks. And if I'm the defense attorney, I'm moving for a mistrial Unfortunately, I don't know that I'd get it.
It does make you wonder whether this reeks of desperation here. Then either whether it's the judge or whether prosecution now trying to push this to get some pound of flesh in this. But how do you think this sorts out?
I think it does reek of desperation, but here's the positive part. Let's flip it. Let's say they go back there and they stick to their guns and they do not come up with a unanimous verdict, and then it's a hung jury. I would like to think, and if prosecutors, if you're watching, please listen to me, that now they can say they even had them go back on the lesser charge again after 18 hours, and they still couldn't get a unanimous decision. That would be enough to turn to the families and the world and say, we did everything we could. We're not going to prosecute them. Case is done. We're asking the final charge to be dismissed.
I wouldn't count on that. The prosecutor in this case, if you look into her a little bit, it appears she's got some BLM kind of sympathizing and leanings, which I don't know how somebody like that is a prosecutor. You can't, and is not shy about it either. So we have a criminalized, a weaponized justice system at this point in New York City, and many would argue at the federal level as well.
The judge in the Daniel Penny trial giving an unprecedented lifeline to Alvin Bragg and the prosecution. He's dismissing the most serious charge of manslaughter in the second degree after the jury was deadlocked on it all day. But Penny still faces a second lesser charge for negligent homicide. Harold Ford Jr., you happen to be the only lawyer at the table. Am I right? Is there any other lawyers?
I'm a JD from Harvard, so.
Oh, wow.
But I don't practice, okay?
Wow.
Yes, you practice.
I defer to Kayla. I'm just a Michigan guy. Go blue. Ohio State.
I actually don't mind Harold Ford Jr. I think he's usually pretty fair, even though I don't agree with him all the time. He's a pretty level-headed guy. He actually gives decent arguments to back up what he's trying to say.
All right, we're going to go Ivies over Big Ten. Fine, let's go.
Okay, so here's what I think. I know a lot of people are saying, look, this first charge dismissed, right, the 15 years. This makes it easier for the second charge to go through. Here's why I disagree. 12:30 p.m. on Outnumbered, we had a jury note that came in. And the jury note said that the jury wanted clarification on what a reasonable person standard is. This is why it's important. This goes to the negligence charge, that one carrying 4 years. And they ask you, would a reasonable average person have perceived the risk to Jordan Neely? Well, there seems to be disagreement if they need clarification on the reasonable person. I'm hopeful there. But when you look at this, the reasonable person, there were many reasonable people on that subway train. The bystanders who thanked him, the bystanders who helped him hold down Jordan Neely, the woman of...
For those of you who don't know, Jordan Neely did not die on that right away. He did not die immediately. He died a little after this. In fact, Daniel Penny spoke to police without a lawyer, waived his Miranda rights, and spoke to police on tape. He didn't even know that Jordan Neely was dead at that point. Now, I don't think you should ever sit in an interrogation room with detectives after something like this happens without a lawyer. That's not saying you're guilty. You just want a representative there who has your best interests at heart to make sure you don't say anything that could be twisted or taken out of context and put you in a jam. And I think at this point, if he could do it over again, Daniel Penny wouldn't have sat down with those detectives without a lawyer.
Color who said this, they're trying to make this about race. Well, a woman of color, that's how she self-describes, said he is a hero. It was self-defense. He is only guilty of trying to help people. Those are the reasonable people on the subway. This is a travesty. It's great news. The first charge is gone, but not a victory, a travesty. A good Samaritan being made into a bad actor, a hero into a villain. Welcome to Manhattan. The only other jurisdictions that could do this were DC and LA. So good job, Alvin Bragg.
Facts. Do you agree with Kaylee as a Michigan graduate?
The characterization of Michigan being less than an Ivy League, I'm not going to accept. I will say this.
You're a swing state.
I largely agree with Kaylee. I come at it slightly different. I think that what the judge has done here is that there might be grounds for reversal if he's convicted of anything, because you can't go through a trial and then allow the prosecution to say, we believe that one of the charges, because the jury can't come to a conclusion, should be dismissed. I think the judge, I'm going to be curious to see once we get more information about how the judge came to this decision.
Judge is probably under pressure. That's why.
Two, What I don't quite understand, I've followed this case. I'm obviously not on a jury and have not received all of the evidence and don't have all of the things that they've seen. But if indeed Kaylee's right, a reasonable person, if he grabbed that guy because the guy was threatening everybody, and he doesn't let up, or say he did let up, and the guy pretended that he was down or was suffering, and he lets up, and the guy stabs him, stabs Daniel Penny.
That's exactly right.
So Daniel Penny, I don't know. I think it was unfair to even who had brought these charges.
100%. 100%.
You make the case basically to anyone in New York, and for that matter, this is a precedent that can be cited anywhere, that someone trying to protect someone on a train. I have kids, right? I have a 10-year-old and 9. We live in New York City. My wife and I, we live in New York City. I take the train. And if my wife and kids are on a train and someone is behaving like that, and someone steps up to protect those on a train, I'd be damned.
My wife had to take the train into New York City yesterday. I feel exactly the same.
As a New York taxpayer, I'd want to see that person prosecuted based on these facts. So Michigan versus Harvard, I'd say it's a tie.
I agree.
As we get here at 5 o'clock.
And the mayor is getting involved. Katie, let's listen to what Adams has to say.
Newly red-pilled Eric Adams.
We've always asked New Yorkers, you see something, say something, do something. And New Yorkers have always had the spirit and energy to come to their fellow New Yorkers. And we have to be honest about the severe mental health crisis that we're facing. And this young man was part of that problem. He was in a revolving door mental health system.
Katie.
Well, I'm glad that the mayor is defending Daniel Penny. This is a case that should have never been brought. In fact, it's a case that sat at the police department for nearly 2 weeks. But then when the social justice woke mob showed up to protest, that's when Alvin Bragg decided to give in to mob justice, and bring these bogus charges against Daniel Penny, who is a hero who's had to go through this for the last year of his life.
And now it looks like we have another rigged trial.
It totally changes everything when it comes to the consequences of this. Now nobody wants to help on the subway because is it really worth being made an example of in Manhattan and New York City to have your life torn apart this way? Alvin Bragg has a habit of either undercharging or not charging criminals like Jordan Neely, who was in and out of the system, had a long rap sheet, while overcharging good Samaritans and good people who want to help their fellow citizens like Daniel Penny.
This falls into what I say all the time. They cause the problem, undercharging, not putting these people away, not having them locked up and wherever they need the help they need if they're mentally ill, stuff like, right? That they cause the problem by doing that. We have somebody that has to now solve the problem on the subway. Now that person's the problem. It always comes back to that. That's how this leftist dystopian nightmare just keeps going. It's the same pattern every time.
So now you have this judge pushing this till Monday when the first charge was dropped at 4 p.m. on a Friday. Used to be that you would work until you were done. So now this has to sit for the weekend. They're trying to squeeze out a guilty charge on the second charge, basically saying, well, they didn't get him on the first one, so now maybe they can get him on the second.
Yeah, they're giving them 2 bites at the apple, basically. I'm just amazed that the jury, they actually have to go into work. I'm surprised they don't have to work. They can't do this deliberation from home over Zoom.
And the consequences of this for the entire country are so far-reaching in terms of what this man has been through. And the people who will suffer the most, of course, Daniel Penny is one of them, but it's the people on the train who will be at risk to these criminals who will now be able to say, well, I'm not the one who's going to be charged. In fact, people can go as a mob to the police station and to Alvin Bragg's office and demand that good people are charged when it's clearly, obviously self-defense, should have never happened. And they're not going to do anything, which means there'll be more innocent victims as a result of just bringing this case in the first place.
Leftist dystopian nightmare.
Yeah, I think this is a case where and this is not an original idea. I was talking to a friend just before the show, and he brought it up. Like, you're looking at the intent of the law versus the letter of the law. If you ask those same 12 jurors with the amount of evidence they've been shown today, and you present it to them and you said, should we indict him? You could probably get a unanimous no.
He's giving way too much credit to a New York jury.
But now that you've given them the facts and you've given them this second charge that is, I guess, ambiguous to say the least, there may be several people there that say this guy did the right thing, but by this law and these facts, we're going to have to convict him. And that's the real travesty here.
They're also going to be homo weekend. If you don't think those jurors are going to be watching television, seeing all this and now going to feel pressure to bring a conviction, you're out of your mind. This is ridiculous what's going on right now. This is rigged.
Is that you have a charge written in such a way that you can justify it with less facts than you should have to have more behind you there. I think some of the things that really hurt him is just about every witness that came up that said something the defense could use also said something the prosecution could use. Like the Marine combat instructor, ultimately the question was asked, did he do it correctly? And I think he said no, or he said something along the lines of he should have let up, at some point. And so
at what point?
There may be this narrow path there to where this jury feels compelled to convict on this second charge simply because they're being asked to, as opposed to, are they being asked, is it right to put him in this situation to begin with? That's how I see it. Listen, this is not a regular citizen. This is a United States Marine that our federal government paid and programmed to stand up and do the right thing, even at his own detriment. On the battlefield, he gets a Bronze Star for that. Mm-hmm. In New York City, he gets 15 to 4 years in prison.
Yeah.
The argument there is going to be, well, we're not on a battlefield anymore. We're back in regular civilization. So I understand what he's saying, but the counter argument there is so easy. Just say, well, we're not on a battlefield. That wasn't a battlefield. That was a New York City train. So, we're not trained to choke people out on the New York City train. That's the counter argument you're going to get to that. So not the best argument in my opinion by him.
And so that just, it pisses me off, but it also blows my mind. Where I live in Georgia, I probably could have been justified at pulling a firearm on that guy if I felt like he was coming at me at any moment. We weren't there, so we don't know if he ever made this motion. We don't know if there was ever a specific point, but if there was any point like that, in my state, I'm justified to use a firearm to protect myself. And in this city, using the least lethal method, they're going to throw you in jail? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's absolutely,
that's a fact.
Crap is what it is.
And what the court has done is terrible. I mean, I really do think this is grounds for reversal, what this judge has done. You can't just throw everything at the spaghetti on the wall, and then when when the jury is deliberating, it's not going your way. So we'll pull that one down so the others. So I hope that the right thing happens here, but if it doesn't, this is certainly grounds for reversal. This is really...
So like I said, Harold Ford, he makes a lot of sense sometimes. I don't agree with him, but at least he makes sense, and when he's logical. He's pragmatic, okay? Jessica Tarloff, the complete opposite.
Good news, bad news for Daniel Penny, what this judge did. If you think about it, you've got some jurors. We don't know how many, Laura. It could just be one juror that was hung up. There might have been 11 jurors wanting to acquit Daniel Penny on the manslaughter charge, and maybe just one juror that wanted to convict him. But the fact that there was a hung jury on the more serious charge is not great news for Daniel Penny, because now the judge is saying on Monday they want the jury to hear the lesser charge, right? Yep. The negligent homicides just being reckless, and that caused the death. If you've already got one or more jurors that are hung wanting to convict Penny on the more serious charge, then rest assured, when they deliberate on Monday, they're going to want to convict him on the reckless negligent homicide.
Completely
so that's
agree.
The bad news for Daniel Penny. The best he's likely to do is a hung jury. The good news is he's got some jurors in his camp that hung on the more serious charge. Those jurors are likely to stick with him on Monday. So we're likely to see a hung
I don't know about that.
jury by Monday or Tuesday on the lesser charge.
Now, Jordan Neely's uncle spoke today at the end of the deliberations. Watch.
On behalf of the Neely family, I want to apologize to all the people that was truly afraid for their lives on that train. Jordan Neely didn't have to die that day. Daniel Penny could have went to another cop. Even he has the legal right to do so.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Andrew, I mean, that's emotional, but frankly, it's absurd.
Completely
it's absolutely absurd. Look, there's something in the law called the assumption of risk. And when you act like an idiot, when you act like an imbecile, when you intimidate people, when you threaten people, you assume the risk that something is going to happen. Laura, this criminal justice system has completely failed this Marine. From Alvin Bragg bringing these charges in the first place, the lead prosecutor not agreeing to a plea deal with a slap on the wrist, and now this judge who shouldn't have dismissed these manslaughter charges. Rather, there should have been a mistrial in this case. And let's start this entire thing over again, because now I'm concerned.
No, don't start it over again. If this case ends in mistrial, these charges should be, the prosecution should just say, that's it. We cannot get a conviction in this case. We did the best we could. It's over. And he will be sued. I think he already is being sued civilly. Fine. Different story, different standard of proof. That's just monetary. But this criminal case, if somehow this jury still hangs and they can't get come to a consensus, and then at that point, the prosecution should let this go. Will they? It's New York City. Again, debatable whether they will or not.
That the defendant in this case is going to be convicted on Monday, and that's a miscarriage of justice. It's ridiculous.
I completely agree with you because, and again, let's remind the viewers what we're talking about here. So they dismissed the more serious charge, but now the lesser charge is criminally negligent homicide. Now, what does this involve? It involves causing someone's death by acting in a manner that was reckless, inattentive, or careless. In addition, if you've recklessly failed to act and as a result someone dies, you could also be found to have committed criminally negligent homicide. Brian.
Let's just look at that for a second. Crime of criminally negligent homicide involves causing someone's death by acting in a manner that was reckless, inattentive, or careless. Now, right there, Daniel Penny was trained in what he was doing. He didn't just, I'm going to put this chokehold on this guy and choke him out to death. No, he was trained on how to apply that chokehold. And it's not applied to necessarily kill somebody. It's applied to restrain somebody, to make them stop fighting back. Okay? It's not there to choke the life out of them in every case. So he was trained. So he wasn't careless or reckless or inattentive. He knew exactly what he was doing. So right there, I think they got problems with this. On paper, they have problems with this charge. But again, it's a New York City jury.
There almost seems to be a feeling you would intuit among some jurors that, okay, maybe we'll go with that one. That's not how the justice system is supposed to work here.
Nope.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. And that's what I meant earlier.
I said two bites at the apple.
Some jurors that are saying, hey, look, they believe Penny consciously was in disregard of Neely's life, knew the risk, still did the chokehold, and therefore he should be found guilty of manslaughter. Do you think those jurors now are going to do a 360? No, like you said, they're going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to get him on the lesser charge. But let me tell you one thing, Laura, where this judge messed up and where there should have been a mistrial on this entire case, and Penny's lawyers are going to have a great appeal issue. The judge should have asked that jury why they hung, because there's a legal justification defense for Penny. That's a self-defense. And if this jury agreed that Penny was entitled to self-defense, then he's off on both charges. If that jury hung on the justification issue, then the entire case should have been dismissed. That judge never asked. And that's an appealable, erroneous issue on the judge's part.
So there you have that. And if that is true, that judge did not ask, again, this is rigged. Why wouldn't the judge? You don't think the judge knows that he has to ask that question? If he, in fact, did not ask that question, why did you guys hang on these charges? Why can't you come to a consensus? What's the sticking point? If he didn't ask and just now says, oh, we'll dismiss that charge, the prosecution wants it dismissed, now you have a bite at this apple of criminally negligent homicide. See if you can get him on this one, is basically what he's implying. This is unbelievable. This is kangaroo court. This is Banana Republic nonsense. And it just keeps going on and on and on. And I'm going to say it right now. He's going to get convicted of criminally negligent homicide. I hope I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I will gladly come on here and admit I was 100% wrong. I think he's going to get convicted because I think this jury is aching to convict him on something. Not all of them. Most of the people on that jury are aching to get him on something. And it's going to take real fortitude and courage for those other jurors to stand their ground and bring this to another hung jury and then have the mistrial. I don't see an acquittal coming. I do not see that. I can't see it. Can't see it. I will be shocked if that jury comes back on Monday, Tuesday, or whenever and says not guilty of all charges. Shocked.
I feel shocked.
Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is this just another example of we have Democrat or left-wing prosecutors and DAs going after people for political reasons? Is this another example of the weaponized justice system? I think it is. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you think about this whole case in general. Do you think Daniel Penny just should have sat there and let this guy terrorize people and possibly punch somebody in the face, injure them, do whatever he was going to do? Or should he, or did he do the right thing and now he's put his whole life in peril, his whole future? Let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me at Opinions Vary on TikTok, also on X. And I appreciate you following me here on YouTube. It's been great. I'm enjoying it a lot. Continue following me here at Opinions Vary.
Opinions vary.